Chapter 8, As If Separate, Part 1. The KFC on Saturday was crowded and lively. Mosheng never expected that Yichen would bring her here. She pulled on Yichen's sleeve and asked, "Yichen, are you sure we didn't come to the wrong place?" "No. Didn't you used to say that this is a place only children like? In the past, you liked this place too." A hint of displeasure flashed across Yichen's face. "Ah. Then I'll save our seats." Mosheng wisely volunteered for an easy task. Sitting by the window on the second floor, Mosheng took a few bites of the burger but couldn't eat more. She swayed her cola, engaging Yichen in conversation, and somehow, she started talking about the things she had just translated. Yichen listened and raised an eyebrow. "When did you become so interested in law?" "Well, it's always good to know more about the law." "No need for that." Yichen smirked. "You can continue being legally blind. As long as you're not getting a divorce, I can help you with anything else." "Ha!" Mosheng was taken aback. Was he joking? "Xiaohe, why are you here too?" A surprised female voice sounded behind Mosheng. She turned her head and saw a woman in her 30s leading a pair of adorable twins towards them. "Uncle He." The twins called out in unison. One of them mischievously said, "Uncle He, your girlfriend is so pretty." "Miss Fong." Yichen stood up to greet her. The sharp and capable-looking woman was a prosecutor at the district prosecutor's office, and Yichen was representing her in a case. Fong patted her son's head. "Don't be impolite." Then she smiled at Yichen. "He lawyer, you're too frugal. Despite your significant income, you take your girlfriend to eat at this foreign street vendor." Yichen smiled. "Some people like it." Did he mean her? Mosheng wondered. She used to like it when she was in college, but after so many years abroad, she doubted she still had the same taste buds. "What's this, lawyer He? Is there something going on between you two?" Fong was observant, a skill developed in her profession. She immediately sensed some ambiguity in Yichen's short response. Her eyes briefly looked at Mosheng, making her feel different from other girls. "Not at all." Yichen brushed it off and changed the topic. "I heard you might be getting a promotion. Congratulations in advance." "It's not confirmed yet," Fong modestly replied. After a moment's hesitation, she asked, "Xiaohe, I wanted to ask you last time we met, but got distracted by a phone call. Did you take Wei Dagwang's case?" "That's not true. I only consulted with his relatives." Wei Dagwang used to be the deputy mayor of a prefecture-level city and was suspected of embezzling and misappropriating funds exceeding 100 million yuan. The newspapers had many reports about this case recently. Mosheng, who worked in a well-informed media industry, naturally heard about it, but these news reminded her of some unhappy memories, so she rarely paid attention. Fong smiled reassuringly. "I would worry if you took on this case. I've already told our office that Xiaohe never takes cases involving corruption and bribery." She sighed. "If every lawyer were like you, many criminals wouldn't be able to escape justice." "Thanks for your praise. However, even criminals have the right to defense. I don't take these cases for personal reasons." "Personal reasons?" Mosheng's hand, stirring the ice cubes, slowed down noticeably as she looked at Yichen's indifferent expression. Her mind wandered to her own situation. "Yichen." Mosheng poked the ice floating in her cola with the straw. "Do you mind my father's situation?" Yichen remained silent, leaving Mosheng feeling a bit uncertain. She continued, "Actually, my father is a good person, and those things. It has nothing to do with me." He interrupted her heartfelt words with a cold tone. In a moment of bravery, Mosheng said, "I won't go to the law firm this afternoon." Yichen stopped his hand, looked at her, and his deep black eyes revealed an indescribable emotion. "I'm going shopping and want to buy something. I won't be able to help you anyway." In reality, she didn't have anything specific to buy. Wandering aimlessly on the crowded streets, Mosheng felt a bit down. Perhaps going shopping was a mistake. This lively atmosphere would only amplify the loneliness of a lonely person. This past month had been like a dream. Two people who were almost strangers suddenly became intimately married. There was no buffer, skipping all the processes, but not skipping the unfamiliarity caused by years of separation and the difficult to untie knots in their hearts. Her father. Her previous marriage. It seemed that all the problems were her fault. Mosheng forced a bitter smile. After browsing through several shops and trying on 2 sweaters, she couldn't find one that suited her. Maybe appearance is a reflection of the heart. She suddenly remembered that she needed a haircut. Finding a hair salon in the city was easy, and as she left the clothing store, she saw one nearby. Artistic hairstylist. The name sounded familiar. Mosheng searched her memory and finally remembered that it was a shop highly recommended by Xiao Hong. Xiao Hong's taste had always been terrible, but she thought not everyone there could have hair like Xiao Hong, right? Pushing the door open, she sat down, waiting for over an hour before it was her turn. "How would you like your hair cut, miss?" the hairstylist asked. "Just make it shorter. Just like this." "Yes. That's perfect." The hairstylist seemed peculiarly pleased. "I love to have creative freedom." He muttered as if talking to himself, but Mosheng didn't pay much attention. Until over an hour later. Mosheng stared at herself in the mirror. How could this happen? Why does it look like this? Her hair was uneven, as if it had been gnawed by some animal. "Do you think it's not good?" The hairstylist glared at her fiercely, scissors gleaming coldly in his right hand while the hairdryer hummed in his left hand. No. Mosheng mustered courage. "Actually, if you look closely, it's quite nice." "Really?" The hairstylist's tone changed completely, and he seemed happy, as if he was about to fly with joy. "Yeah," Mosheng confirmed. The disheveled look of the model in the shop window flashed in her mind, and she couldn't help but laugh. Passers-by looked at her with bewilderment, unable to imagine why someone with such a head of hair would be so happy. "Miss, would you like to come inside and take a look?" The saleswoman greeted her enthusiastically. Mosheng just realized that she had been staring at the model in the store window for a long time. She had a habit of staring at things without blinking when she was absent-minded. She used to scare Yichen like this often. "Sure." Feeling a little embarrassed, Mosheng walked into the store under the saleswoman's hospitable smile. The store sold famous brand men's clothing, and Mosheng was only casually looking around until she stopped in front of a windbreaker. A simple style and Yichen's favorite color. She involuntarily touched the collar, imagining how handsome he would look in it. "Are you buying clothes for your boyfriend, miss? This is the latest design of this year. It's currently on an 80% discount, only 3,200 yuan. Mosheng was stunned. It was so expensive, almost her 1 month's salary. She didn't have that much money on her. She apologetically shook her head to the saleswoman's smile. Walking towards the door, she hesitated to leave. The windbreaker really suited him. Suddenly, she thought of the card that Yichen had given her. Hurriedly walking back, she asked, "Do you accept card payments here?" "Swipe here, please." The swish sound stopped. "Miss, please sign here." Mosheng nearly wrote her own name out of habit, but then she remembered that this was Yichen's card, and she should sign Yichen. Yichen. She had written this name many times. Once, they had a little argument. She couldn't remember the specifics, but she knew she was upset. She went to study alone with a math textbook, which was supposed to be draft paper. When she returned to her senses, the paper was filled with Yichen. Then Yichen's voice suddenly came from behind her. "Mosheng, you made a mistake." He looked at her, his eyes filled with laughter. "Where?" The embarrassment of being caught vanished, and she picked up the pen, writing it seriously to show him. "Yichen, what was wrong with it?" "The stroke order is wrong. The on the right side of should be written inside the comma, and finally, the hook should be drawn." He encouraged her, "Come, write it again." She must have been taken in by his seriousness, as she picked up the pen and actually prepared to write again. Until she finished writing she came to her senses. "Yichen, why am I writing your name?" Mosheng handed the signed slip to the saleswoman, who smiled and handed her the bag. "Welcome to visit us again." The memories of the past made the slightly improved mood descend again. Walking out of the store, Mosheng stood blankly. The sweetness of the past was now beyond reach, while the sorrow of reality stayed by her side without leaving. When would they be able to regain their past happiness? And when would this repetitive emotional turmoil come to an end? Chapter 8, As If Separate, Part 2. Thinking that Yichen wouldn't return home so early, Mosheng solved her dinner on the street and arrived home after 8 o'clock. When she opened the door, the room was indeed pitch black. As she fumbled for the light switch, a deep male voice sounded. "Back already?" "Yichen." Mosheng was startled, as she wasn't prepared for his presence. The voice came from the balcony, with Yichen's tall figure facing away from her, not turning around. The air between them felt heavy and suffocating. "Why didn't you answer the phone?" Yichen asked solemnly, a faint red light glowing between his fingers. "What phone?" Mosheng took it out of her bag and found it had already run out of battery. "It's out of power." "Out of power. So that's why." Yichen seemed to relax suddenly, his voice carrying a hint of fatigue. "Go to bed early." Mosheng answered, hesitated for a moment, and then said determinedly, "Yichen, I need to talk to you about something." "What is it?" "I feel that we don't seem like a married couple." "We?" "Is that so?" Yichen said with a hint of sarcasm. "Then what should a married couple look like? You should have more experience in this aspect than me." For a long time, there was no sound behind him. Yichen put out his cigarette, turned around, and saw Mosheng standing a few meters away with a bag in her hand, lips tightly pressed, and a pale face. "I bought some clothes for you." Mosheng stared at the floor, speaking softly. "I used your card to pay. Would you like to try them on?" A sharp pain surged in Yichen's heart, making him unconsciously clench his fists. For all those days, all he ever imagined was the day when Mosheng could stand before him again, within reach, no longer a mere illusion. And now she was really standing in front of him. What else was he yearning for? "You." Yichen's tone softened, and his voice stopped abruptly when he saw her hair. Realizing his intense gaze, Mosheng looked up. Was he looking at her hair? She felt a bit embarrassed. "I cut my hair. I saw it with my own eyes." Yichen's tone was firm, and there seemed to be something accumulating in his eyes. He turned away, seemingly unable to look at her for too long. He quickly lit another cigarette, and after a while, in an extremely suppressed voice, he said, "Go to sleep. But don't talk to me right now." He rudely interrupted her. Although Mosheng had been tired from shopping all day, she couldn't fall asleep. She laid on the bed, listening to Yi Chen's footsteps moving from the balcony to the study and then, after a while, from the study to the guest room, and finally heard the sound of the door closing, leaving her in silence. She didn't know when she fell asleep. The next morning, she woke up feeling a sore throat, and based on her experience, she must have caught a cold again. Yi Chen had already left the house early. Mosheng took some medicine and had a simple lunch, but she still felt uncomfortable, so she went back to sleep. When she woke up, the window outside had already darkened. Yi Chen stood by the bed, his hand resting on her forehead, looking somewhat serious. Mosheng stared at him, wondering if she was dreaming. Yi Chen moved his hand away. "Get up. I'll take you to the hospital." Wasn't that too much of a fuss? "I just have a slight cold." "You have a fever." "I already took some medicine," Mosheng insisted. He looked at her, nodded, and didn't say anything else. He got up and walked away. Mosheng thought he would give up, but she felt slightly disappointed for some reason. Unexpectedly, Yi Chen went to the wardrobe, took out her clothes, and placed them in front of her. "Do you want to do it yourself, or should I help you change?" As the liquid dripped slowly through the infusion tube, she had indeed come to the hospital. Remembering how someone almost forced her to change clothes earlier, Mosheng blushed suddenly and glared at the person across, who was reading documents. As if sensing her gaze, Yi Chen looked up, and Mosheng quickly averted her eyes. Yi Chen didn't mind and seemed to remember something. He stood up, went out for a moment, and returned with an entertainment newspaper, placing it beside her. Mosheng pretended not to notice and picked up another newspaper left on the nearby empty seat to read. Yi Chen raised an eyebrow, letting her be. If his wife wanted to learn something, studying securities investment would be a good thing. Mosheng stared at the colorful newspaper. Regret surged within her. Most of it was a chaotic mess of images, and when she finally found some words, they were accompanied by a bunch of numbers and professional terms, making her feel even more dizzy. Regretful. Her eyes glanced at that colorful newspaper. She really wanted to take it over and look, but then she looked at Yi Chen, who was concentrating on his work. He probably wouldn't notice, right? Her hand moved stealthily, almost grabbing it, when Yi Chen suddenly flipped a page in his documents, and she immediately pulled back. Forget it. Mosheng felt discouraged. It's just a little over an hour. She could endure it. This she could endure, but there were some things that weren't so easy. Half an hour later, Mosheng started feeling restless. Yi Chen noticed her movements and frowned, turning to the middle-aged woman next to him and said, "Can you help me with something?" When he returned from the bathroom, Mosheng restrained herself for a while but couldn't resist asking, "How did you know what I wanted to do?" He didn't even lift his head, saving energy and answering her with 4 words, a general inference. "This guy." Mosheng glared at him. Returning from the hospital, Yi Chen gazed at Mosheng as she slept, then turned off the bedroom light and went to the study. Is it because she slept too much in the afternoon or because of the drip bottle? Mosheng felt much better and couldn't sleep at all. She tossed on the bed and suddenly remembered something, almost jumping up. My goodness. She's going to Hong Kong tomorrow, and she hasn't prepared anything yet. She really didn't know what she had been doing for the past 2 days. She had forgotten such an important matter. Hurriedly getting up from the bed, she took out her travel bag and started packing. She was in such a hurry that her documents fell to the ground, and Mosheng bent down to pick them up, but someone's hand was faster and picked them up. Ha! Upon getting up, her wrist was immediately tightly grabbed by someone. Yichen held her identification documents, his eyes clouded with gloominess. What are you doing? Packing. Her wrist was hurting from his grip. Mosheng wanted to break free, but he held her even tighter. Her eyes glanced at the already mostly packed luggage, and the gloominess in Yichen's eyes deepened. Where are you going? She realized she hadn't told him yet, so Mosheng obediently answered, Hong Kong. Hong Kong. Yichen's anger gradually intensified. If it wasn't just a coincidence, no, it wasn't a coincidence at all. If he hadn't wanted to come and see if she slept well, whether she would disappear without a trace tomorrow morning without his knowledge. Did she have any sense of being a wife at all? Did she really understand that she was already his wife and could no longer leave him decisively like she did before? The wounds from the past were cruelly torn open. Yichen's grip couldn't help but tighten, and his gloomy eyes continued to stare at her without any relaxation. Fine, tell me, how many years will you be gone this time? What was he talking about? Mosheng felt the dizziness from her cold coming back, and the pain in her wrist was becoming increasingly hard to ignore. Yichen, can you let go of me first? Let her go. No way. With a forceful pull, she fell into his embrace. Yichen leaned down and kissed her fiercely and angrily, not gentle at all. That kiss seemed like he wanted to swallow her whole, denying her even a breath of air. The arm around her waist tightened, as if he wanted to mold her into his own body, to become a part of him. Yichen. Mosheng wanted to break free from his grasp, feeling the anger he conveyed through his actions, but she couldn't understand why. However, her feeble struggle seemed to fuel his passion. Her small resistance deepened his desire to control her. He pinned her down on the bed, firmly holding her, while his deep eyes gazed at Mosheng beneath him. She was the only possession he wanted. Mosheng, this is a husband's duty. He sucked on her delicate skin, forcefully leaving his mark on her. His intense and direct actions caused Mosheng to gasp lightly. It hurts. Yichen's movements paused slightly. Hurt. Did she even understand what pain meant? Pain was the enormous void left when she lightly smiled in her dreams, the inexplicable days no matter what she did, and the even greater loneliness that followed every moment of success. How could she understand? During those times, Mosheng, you were in someone else's embrace. Her sleepwear was half pulled off, loosely hanging at her waist, and her hands were trapped, leaving her unable to move, at his mercy. The sight before his eyes and the intoxicating sensation in his hands caused Yichen to lose all rationality. His burning gaze locked onto her, the desire he had been suppressing for 7 years now engulfing him completely. His palms roamed freely over every inch of the forbidden territory he longed to possess, leaving scorching kisses on the skin he yearned to claim. The passion carried a hint of resentment, making Mosheng unable to think clearly, feeling as if she was immersed in a dreamlike state. Until a strange, sharp ringtone interrupted the trance-like atmosphere, bringing her back to her senses. Dazed and confused, she vaguely remembered that the peculiar ringtone belonged to Xiao Hong. Could she even think clearly now? Yichen tightened his grip, but gradually, the incessant ringing demanded his attention as well. He slightly loosened his hold on her and reached over to answer the call. Finally, Mosheng had a chance to catch her breath, but as soon as she tried to speak, she began coughing uncontrollably. She was already feeling unwell due to a cold, and now the cough seemed endless. The ringing stopped, leaving the room filled only with the sound of her intense coughing. Yichen remained half-pressed against her but didn't continue. His lost rationality started to return bit by bit. Mosheng's clothes were in disarray, and the faint red marks on her body seemed to accuse him of his recent roughness. He could even feel her trembling slightly. A wave of self-disgust overwhelmed him. He had already forced her into marriage, and now he was forcing her to accompany him to bed. He forced out a bitter smile. "What are you going to do in Hong Kong?" "Business trip. The magazine needs to discuss a collaboration with a publishing house in Hong Kong." "Yicheng, it'll only be a few days. I forgot to tell you," Mosheng explained one by one. Yichen remained silent. What had he just done? Marital rape? Yichen calmed his rapid breathing, suppressing the surging emotions. He began helping her tidy her clothes and buttoned her bra, feeling her tremble slightly and look somewhat uneasy. "I won't do anything to you," he said in a low voice, self-mockery evident as he suddenly got up and left the bedroom. Mosheng only heard a loud bang, and she was left alone in the room. The strange ringtone resolutely rang again, and Mosheng reached over to pick up the phone. Xiao Hong's excited voice came through. "Sheng, don't forget to buy something for me in Hong Kong. It's really cheap there." After Xiao Hong's enthusiastic explanation, Mosheng closed the call. She wanted to smile, but a smile couldn't be forced out. Tomorrow she would go to Hong Kong, and they would be like this. Wavering and hesitating, she eventually pushed open that door. The guest room was dimly lit by a faint yellow table lamp. Yichen sat on the bed, gazing intently at her. The ashtray beside him was already filled with cigarette butts. Quietly, Mosheng walked to the other side of the bed, placed her pillow next to his, lifted the corner of the blanket, carefully lay down, and then closed her eyes. Yichen remained silent and lit another cigarette. After a while, Mosheng spoke softly, "Can you turn off the light? I want to sleep." The word disappeared into the air. She was suddenly lifted into the air and seated on his lap, tightly confined in his embrace. His warm breath brushed against her neck, and Yichen's low, hoarse voice carried an imperceptible tension. "Do you know what this means?" How could she not know? Mosheng lowered her gaze and used her fingers to write on his chest. 1 stroke, 2 strokes, 3 strokes. She was writing. Yichen trembled and grabbed her restless hand, his eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. "Mosheng, why do you torture me like this?" At that moment, between sorrow and joy, she kissed him to prove her current reality. When he finally let her go, Mosheng was already gasping for breath, leaning weakly against his chest. The silence was so ambiguous. Mosheng felt uneasy and wanted to find something to say. "Yichen, I caught a cold." Wasn't he afraid of getting infected? "I know, I won't take advantage of you now." Yichen held her, helpless and resigned. "Ha!" Mosheng was a little stunned. Did he misunderstand something? But did she have to say that she didn't mean it? She didn't want to. It would seem like she was eager to be taken advantage of by him, and he would surely mock her for that in the future. "Well, you can take advantage." Who was speaking? It definitely wasn't her. Mosheng was extremely embarrassed. Yichen remained silent, didn't he hear? Mosheng felt relieved for a moment, but then she found that the buttons on her chest had been quietly unfastened. Her fair shoulders gradually exposed to the cold air, covered in the clear and deep marks left by his previous passion. It was evident how forceful he had been just now, but now he wanted to take advantage of her again. His fiery lips pressed against her skin once more, branding over the previous marks. Mosheng, did I hear wrong? Yichen's voice was filled with a husky tone. Mosheng couldn't speak, he had gone all the way, and he asked such a question. The passion forcibly extinguished was so easily reignited. Yichen suddenly carried her and walked to the bedroom, placing her on the bed. Here or there, what's the difference? Mosheng didn't understand, but she didn't have the strength to ask anymore. Yichen's scorching body covered hers, and his fiery lips and tongue dominated her completely, taking her on a journey through an unfamiliar world until the passion subsided. Mosheng fell asleep in a daze, but her sleep was restless. She woke up in the middle of the night, not knowing what time it was. The space beside her was empty, and her eyes wandered around the room until she saw Yichen standing by the window. Perhaps it was because of the darkness, but Mosheng suddenly felt that his figure was so heavy, making it hard for her to breathe. He seemed to sense her gaze and turned around, but in the dark night, she couldn't see what was hidden in his eyes. He put out the cigarette and walked over, lifting the blanket to lie next to her, quietly hugging her. Mosheng remained silent for a while before she couldn't help asking, Yichen, what are you thinking? There was unease in her voice. Nothing, just figuring some things out. What did he figure out? Mosheng wanted to ask, but she was silenced by his kiss. Mosheng, have your hair grow longer. Although she didn't understand how they got to this topic, her attention was shifted. She asked him with concern, is my hair ugly? Yichen's lips curved into a smile. No, it's not. Because, that way, there will be more of you. He kissed her hair, dealing another blow to her already fragile confidence. Mosheng, it's really ugly.